Portland's most respected and lowest priced office furniture dealer.
Office Furniture Direct.
Done. That means good day. Talkcast PDX on the web, talkcastpdx.com. It's Tuesday, May 31st. Name of the show is the Bogdanich Perspective. I'm your host, Paul Bogdanich, and welcome. It's episode number 63. I'm going to title it Gang War, a Gang War, and we'll find out later. Talkcast PDX, sponsored by Office Furniture Direct, number one commercial office furniture dealer in the Portland metro area. Low prices, free delivery. Go visit them on the web. OFD PDX, so Office Furniture Direct, OFDPDX.com. It's today, May 31st, is National Speak in Complete Sentences Day. Yesterday was Memorial Day. Interesting holiday. It was originally Decoration Day is what they used to call it. It was started in the southern United States in 1866, immediately after the Civil War, called Decoration Day, and then the trend quickly spread to the north, and by 1868, pretty much the entire nation at that time was celebrating Declaration Day. Congress declared it a holiday in 1868. And instead of Decoration Day, it became Memorial Day. It was originally a Civil War holiday, but it wasn't to commemorate the dead. It was more about culture and rebuilding. After the great wars of the early 20th century, First World War and Second World War, in America, it became a Dead Relatives Day. I remember when I was a kid, used to go to the cemetery and edge the gravestones, grandparents and people who died early, and then put flowers on them and stuff like that. And since lately, call it the year 2000, it's become this severely militaristic, fallen soldiers holiday. In 1968, they moved it. They put it as part of the. They moved all the holidays that used to fall on a set date. They used most of them, not the 4th of July, not Thanksgiving, and so on, but they moved a lot of them to the first Monday of the month to create 3-day weekends to boost the hotel industry at the time, 1968. But so it's celebrated on the last Monday in May anymore. We're going to do our fun stuff just to start. If you could please put up graph number 1. This is a Japanese man, and he doesn't release his name. He only goes by the name of Toko. He spent 15,000 American dollars having a costume maker perfect this costume for him. And then that's a man, and he wanted to thank them for helping him fulfill his dream of becoming an animal. And then he went on the web and made videos and all the rest of that stuff. And you can take that down. Name is Toko, a Japanese gentleman. Had $15,000 to pay for the suit. And all the comments on the web are, ha ha, look at this. He spent $15,000 on that. Oh, isn't he cute? And this and that. But if you think about it for a minute, if a man wants to create an animal suit, why not a wolf or a lion or a bear? If you wanted to stylize the animal suit, you could make yourself a werewolf with perfect hair, so that you could go out and get a pina colada at Trader Vic's, or, maybe you would be Baloo the bear or something like that. But he just wanted It's interesting. Must be a kind person, sensitive. He just wanted to be just a pretty well cared for dog. Kind of interesting. Anyway, graph number 2. This is an animal who knows what it's doing. This is Randy. Randy's a bearded dragon lizard, and Randy was playing with a SpongeBob SquarePants pineapple and got his head stuck. Earned him a trip to the emergency room where they had to cut the thing off his head. Surgeon said, "Randy, we're not laughing at you, we're laughing with you." But Randy's a lizard, and lizards are smart, and he knew they were laughing at him. You can take that one down, put up number 3. A activist in France hit the Mona Lisa with a pie. Hit the glass and the protective glass in front of the Mona Lisa with the pie. Rather elaborate scheme. Disguised himself as an old woman in a wheelchair to get close and so on. He was a climate change activist and everything else. And, I don't know what they'll do to him, but he hit the Mona Lisa with a pie, or the glass in front of the Mona Lisa with a pie. Interesting, the Mona Lisa. I thought I would talk about it for a minute. They think it was worked on over a period of about 10 years. It was finished in the year 1503. The artist is Leonardo Da Vinci. All right, so it was finished in 1503. It's just a portrait piece. We know who it is. I didn't put the name down here, but it was just the wife of a rich cloth merchant. Just wanted a portrait of his wife, commissioned Da Vinci to do it. Purchased by the King of France in 1518. Started hanging in the Louvre in 1797. It was stolen by an employee in 1911, and they recovered it. In 1956, they had it on display in Montauban, which is a province in France, and some knucklehead threw acid on it, but they repaired it. In 2011, the very wealthy wife of a Russian oligarch who was denied French citizenship threw a cup of tea on it. And then most recently, this guy threw a pie at it. But it's interesting. It was just a portrait, when it was originally commissioned and done. You can take that down. In other little tidbits, Royal Caribbean is sponsoring a cruise through the Bermuda Triangle, and it leaves in March of 2023 to sail the Bermuda Triangle. And for everybody young enough not to remember, the Bermuda Triangle has all kinds of disappearances, ships, planes, things of that nature. It was kind of mystical, like Sasquatch thing in the 70s. And in connection with this cruise, if in the event that the ship disappears, Carnival Cruise will refund 100% of your purchase price. That's part of the gig. Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, was arrested for a DUI. He was attending a dinner with some friends, driving home. Some other driver caused the crash, but he was involved in the crash, and he got arrested for drunk driving because apparently he had too much to drink at the dinner. And they use it as a hook to describe the Pelosi's wealth and their homes and all the rest of this. This was his home in Napa Valley. He was arrested at 10:20 in the evening. He was not released until the following morning. So he spent the full night in jail. And there's no report that he did one of these "do you know who I am" things. Just guy got involved in an accident, submitted to the officers, spent the night in the drunk tank, and got himself a lawyer the following day, presumably, like the rest of us plebes. So that actually speaks pretty good for him. I was looking at, I just had a look at that. He was born in 1940. So was his wife. They were married in 1963, both of them. So they were 23 years old. Raised 5 children. And then in 1987, so he was 47, she was 47, she decided to go into politics. And, everybody knows about her politics and her position since then. And if you were him, you might be drinking too. You never know how something's going to turn out. But, like I said, married whatever it was by that point and had raised 5 kids. And then all of a sudden you're a political husband. They found a skeleton, a very well-preserved skeleton in Pompeii Herculaneum, which is in Rome. Vesuvius destroyed the towns. And it was so well-preserved that they could do the DNA. And they sequenced the DNA to try and find out, what this ancient Roman was like. And it turned out he was an Italian, basically. The beer bottle shortage, the natural gas, the increased prices of natural gas in Europe, where they use the gas to heat the glass to make the beer bottles, that is causing the problems in Germany, has spread to England. And the guy over there is saying, the head of the industry, our wines and spirits suppliers from around the globe are facing ongoing struggles that will have a knock-on effect. As a result, there will be a less variety in bottled beers we see on UK store shelves. And they don't know it yet, but that's a problem. That's going to cause, that gets the donkey's attention. You can talk about all this political stuff and he did this and he did that, but you run them out of beer, they'll notice that. So all throughout Europe, rainfall levels are well down in France, 25% below. Had a really hot May, decreased wheat production. France produces basically all the wheat for continental Europe. It's just, a problem. In Ukraine, they grow a lot of wheat, and the head of the people that watch the wheat supply says that in less than 3 months from now, they have to move 20 to 25 million tons of grain, and they'll still have another 50 million tons after that to move, or else it'll rot. What did he say? He said that there are 49 million people in 43 countries that are knocking on famine's door. And unless we get this supply issue straightened out, huge problems again in the summer. It's just going to be a tough summer, anyway. CNN had a congressman on the show, a guy by the name of Michael McCall, Republican out of the 10th District of Texas, and they were at some forum or somewhere, and he was the U.S. delegate to this forum, and President Vladimir, or whatever his name is, Volodymyr Zelensky from Ukraine, showed up on the screen, and the audience of Western sycophants gave him a standing ovation. And this congressman from Texas went on CNN and was saying that the Chinese delegation that was sitting behind him, didn't even clap, let alone give him a standing, ovation, and it was disrespectful and blah, blah, blah. Turns out the delegation behind him wasn't Chinese at all. It was Vietnamese. And if anybody knew anything about the Vietnamese, let's just say it would be unlikely to get a standing ovation for a propped up American president in a country in the midst of a civil war. It's like, outrageous. But Congress is full of people of similar intelligence and zeal for this Iraq war, or Ukraine. Speaking of which, put up graph number 4, please. This is kind of nondescript. This was just the Ukraine Defense Contact Group giving a briefing at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. on May 23rd, 2022. So last Monday. And not that much about it, but if you look close, the Ukrainian flags, the blue and yellow things there, they're upside down. You can take that down. So they hung the flags upside down. And this is a Defense Department briefing. All the way from the 8th century to the 20th century, an upside down flag was a signal from a garrison or an outpost of a situation of severe distress or about to be overrun. In the 9th century, you would, if you were an outpost closer to the coast or the riverlands, and you were suffering attack by Vikings or Avars or somebody like that, you would put the flag upside down. A scout would see it. He would go and inform the king. At that time, either Pippin or Charlemagne. And then Charlemagne or Pippin, whoever, would decide whether to send a body of troops to bail you out or let you die. But for 1,000 years, an upside-down flag was a signal of about to be overrun or severe distress. The war in Ukraine. Last week I said it would make a great novel. Turns out I missed the plot. I still think it's a great novel, but I missed the plot. These Russians with attitude guys did another. They didn't advertise it. They posted it. They said they wanted to talk about the right-wing groups in Russia and Ukraine. It was behind a paywall. I went and looked at it. It was an hour and a half long, to my surprise, hour and 40 minutes. Had to listen to it 3 times and take notes because they used the Russian pronunciation of the cities and all the stuff, and it was very difficult to correlate that to a map and see what they were talking about. It turns, and this is why I titled the thing Gang War. The Soviet Union, as it used to exist, dissolved in 1990, 89, 90. It was chaos, under Yeltsin in the early 90s. Putin was the person that transformed the old Soviet Union into the Russian Federation. He was a former, at the time, he was a KGB officer. They got rid of the KGB. They now call it the FSB, but he was an intelligence officer. And at the time, I did not realize this. It's very hard to describe. In the modern world, it would be like if Alex Jones and Bill Maher and Rochelle Maddow and each had their own private armies. It was, except for in those days, it was almost like Jerry Falwell, the Christian evangelicals, and Pat Robertson and those guys, guys with visions for society and plans. They had their own, private armies. And that was the situation in Russia when Putin took over, and he tried to cobble together a coalition. And the ones that didn't want to go with the coalition were driven out, and they all settled in Ukraine, as it turns out. And he's been dealing with these people his entire career. They're visionaries with private armies, Slavs, very brutal. And I was saying last week that none of the attacks made any sense in a military sense, and they don't. But in listening to this latest thing, it's who they attack. Exactly who the defenders are, from which battalion, from which one of these subgroups that was driven out of Russia, is as important as where or why in any military sense. A couple of really alarming developments, just to go back. All right. So you have this situation where all these groups are driven out of Russia and Belarus and all the rest of these places. They all settle in Ukraine. You have a very corrupt government, and it's like Ukraine was like Libya or something after we destroyed it, with warlords running the place. Okay. And then we step in, we put in a government, we sponsor a color revolution in 2014. We put in a government, we pick one of the groups, one of these paramilitary groups. The one we picked was Azov. We give them weapons, we give them money, we make them the security arm of the government, and then we start using them to pressure Russia. All right, Russia responds, and started this war. We start giving them anti-tank weapons and anti-aircraft, shoulder-launched Stinger missiles. One of the things I didn't know, turns out these Javelin missiles and these other missiles that we gave them, T-72 tanks with reactive armor will withstand 3, maybe 4 hits. It makes them immobile, gives the crew a concussion, blows the tracks off them, so that they can't proceed, but it does not penetrate the armor, detonate the munitions inside, and kill the tank. And they can take it to a repair center and refurbish it in less than 72 hours, and then the tank's back on the road. And that's very interesting. Not published, but and it's only the modern T-72s with the reactive armor that this is good for. The T-56s and 62s and all that. You hit them with a javelin, they get blown up. Any kind of a lighter vehicle gets blown up. But the T-72 tanks will take hits from these missiles. So anyway, we flood this area with these missiles. Turns out the Russian tanks can take hits and, send them to a repair center. They're back on the road within 4 days. Okay, that's not working. So we supplied them with a thing called an M777, which is just a self-propelled 155 millimeter gun. 155 millimeters is 6.1 inches. The shell that it fires is 6-inch diameter, 2 feet long, weighs 100 pounds. But this gun that we sent them, this M777 Excalibur variant, fires a shell like that up to 30 miles, call it 32 miles, something like that. Normally, to get that kind of distance out of an artillery shell, you have to fire 8-inch, which is, 8-inch diameter, 3 foot long, 200-pound shell, and the ammunition's so heavy, it takes 2 men to load the thing instead of 1. Has to be self-propelled just to carry any shells with it, and so on. So we have this little 155 towed gun that fires as far as a 205, and we sent the Ukrainians a bunch of these things to increase their armaments. And this was just recently, about a month ago. All right, so they get these things. Turns out what they used it for. All right, they didn't use it in any kind of battle circumstance. They didn't create a fire base in an area where they could use it for artillery support to defend different positions and so on, which is what you would expect. Instead, they took it to a place close to the Donetsk province, which is one of the breakaway regions, put them within range of the capital city, which is also called Donetsk in this particular case. And about 3 days ago or 4 days ago, started shelling the capital city indiscriminately. No military advance to go with it, killing teachers and school children and firefighters and stuff like this. So they started shelling the capital city just out of spite, no military, and they used the extra range on this gun that we gave them to do it. And the Russians went apeshit, excuse my language, but not in that area. Their troops were advancing further to the northeast towards 2 very big towns in they're called Slovansk, and I can't even pronounce the name of the other one. But outside of Slovansk, about 10 miles, there was like a road junction town, 10,000 people, 12,000 people, and road and railway junction type of deal, warehouses and this and that. And it was called, in the American, Servodonetsk. And they shelled, the Ukrainians used these guns we gave them to shell a city that was before that out of range. The Russians, instead of taking Servodonetsk in the way that they had been doing, they would send in dismounted infantry. If the infantry was having a problem or identified a target, they would call it in and they would fire 1 or 2 shells, destroy the target, and then the infantry would advance. That's the way they were doing it before this. After they shelled Donetsk, I saw some drone footage. They destroyed every building, all of them substantially destroyed and then consumed by fire. Trees, burnt to the ground. It's just gone. I mean, everything, just everything, warehouses, civilian apartment blocks, everything. I mean, this drone that was flying over, dead bodies all over the place. You couldn't see any movement, not a person, not a bird, not a dog, nothing. All right. They totally wiped it out, and which is, a big change. Article in today's paper on page 7, right? This is the article, half a page. All of it but 2 paragraphs are absolutely meaningless propaganda about how great the Ukrainians are and what they should do and this and that. The operative portion, if you'll permit me to read. Surely somebody, the governor of Luhansk region, which together with its neighboring Donetsk makes up the Donbass region, on Monday morning said all critical infrastructure in Severodonetsk had been destroyed, as had 60% of residential housing. Speaking on Ukrainian television, he described the battle. The smell of corpses is constant because they do not take away the bodies. They are firing everything in the arsenal of the Russian Federation, unquote. And that's true. You know, the footage was horrific. I mean, they killed everybody and everything in the town. And at the time, we were discussing giving them what we call multiple launch rocket systems with extended range that they would have been able to use to, well, if you get them close to the Dnieper River, they would have reached Moscow, for example. And then the latest word is that after what they did with the M77s at Donetsk, you can't trust them, because if you gave them those, they'd fire on Moscow, and then you'd have a problem. So the last word I heard is that we're not going to give them those. Rational decision. But that's why I call it a gang war. It all goes back to the early 90s with all these groups, and then they all settle in Ukraine and who they attack. It's like if this was happening in Chicago or Milwaukee or Flint or somewhere, we would refer to this attack on the town as one side airing out the crib, of the other side. It doesn't really matter. They're after the people inside. It's not part of a broader military strategy or moving the front this way or that way. They're attacking the people. So it's good novel. Like I say, maybe somebody will write it up someday, but it's all personality, or there's a huge personality element in it. And I would just return to Gwen Dyer, military historian by the name of Gwen Dyer, talking about the dialectical war. And he was talking about war generally. And he said one element of the pattern, however, shows up quite early on in this long tale of wars, which is that consistently war will tend to expand beyond the purposes for which it is waged in terms of the damage that it does. In other words, they went to war over Sicily and they ended up destroying all of Carthage and Italy to settle the question. In other words, once you start, for as long as we have records, when you start a war, it tends to grow in terms of the damage it does. This one's no exception, and having a problem. Let's go to the markets. If you could put up graph number 5. This is just our graph from September 30th to June 30th, 2022. Talked about it last week on Friday, April 29th, it made a new low. Then on May 6th, it made a new low. Then on May 13th, it made a new low. And then on May 20th, it made a new low. And then last week, in between May 20th and May 27th, it rose 6.6%, 6.58%. So it rose last week, and we were talking about when was the Fed going to defend it. Was it going to be 4,900 that it kept bouncing off of? Were they going to let it go down to 3,400 or 3,000? This is pretty clear evidence that it's 3,900. Why 3,900? And this might be temporary, I don't know, but they defended at 3,900. This is Fed action that moved it up like this. The only thing I can figure, and this is, we're so messed up in, all we care about is the narrative and politics and printing money. The only thing material I can see about 3,900 is that when Joe Biden was inaugurated, the level of the stock market was 3851.85 points, so 3852. And they don't want it to go below that. You can take that graph down because that would create a headline opportunity. The S&P 500 and the Dow are lower than when Joe Biden was inaugurated. Biden's killing the market, blah, blah, blah. And that appears to be the only rationale for defending 3,900. Nevertheless, they did defend it, moved up almost 7% last week. We monitor 54 stocks, which includes the largest, call it 36 stocks in the S&P, which is, pretty much in the world, barring some of the companies in China. But, so all your large stocks, and we monitor 54 plus some others, but 30, 35, 38 of them probably, 38 are the largest stocks in all the different sectors. Out of those 54, all 54 stocks went up. Not a single one went down last week. Every sector, all of them. I mean, every 54 up, 0 down, which is coordinated central bank buying. They bought everything. They inflated the market. They kept it from falling below 3,900. They didn't take the stocks up. If you've been watching, it is common anymore to see a 30% drop or a 20% drop or a 15, didn't do a lot of that. There were only 4 stocks that went up more than 10%. Most of them were up in between, just what the market went up, a little over 6, but under 7. Another 12 stocks that were more than 4%, but less than 6% up. Again, no losers out of the 54. But if you had one of our demonstration portfolios tracking the top 30 stocks that was capitalization weighted, you would have expected a return of $6,585 for the week, and it only returned $6,146. But that portfolio, because it's the 30 largest stocks, is heavily weighted towards communication services, internet technology, and the consumer staples and discretionary has no representation at all for materials, real estate, or utilities. If you took those same top 30 stocks and equal weighted them, you would have only gained $5,800 instead of $6,580. And if you took the top 3 stocks out of every sector, in other words, include every sector, then you would have gained $6,510 instead of $6,580. So in other words, the broader market slightly outperformed a balanced portfolio of only the largest stocks, significantly outperformed a tech-heavy portfolio of the largest stocks, whether it was equal weighted or capitalization weighted, and clear indication of broad-based buying by the central bank coordination. So for now, 3,900 appears, the market was flat today, but like I said, went up 7% in a week last week, so that's good. What was it? If you look at it from its interim high, it made an interim high. It had that Ukraine war relief rally when the zeitgeist was that Ukraine was going to win. Now they're flying their flags upside down. But on that relief rally, which ended March 29th, since that time, it's fallen. It was 15.4% below that level. After the recovery yesterday, it's only 11.4% below that level. So looks like they're defending 3,900 of the 54 stocks. Big gainers. None of this is on earnings. This is all just on sentiment combined with central bank buying. JP Morgan up 12%, NVIDIA up 12%, Costco up 13%, Tesla up 14%. Those are the only stocks above 10%. In between 8 and 10%, Bank America Corporation, Boeing Aircraft, ConocoPhillips, Apple, NextEra Energy, Microsoft, and Lowe's. So your 2 largest tech companies in the world there. Two largest companies in the world for that matter, Apple and Microsoft. Below them, in stocks that only went up in between 7 and 8, your retailers, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Nike, Broadcom, Cisco, Sherwin-Williams, and Amazon. So all your retailers went up more than 7, but less than 8. in between stocks that went up more than 6 but less than 7: Intel, Verizon, real estate concern, Disney, UPS, MasterCard, another real estate concern, ExxonMobil, Cisco, Chevron, another real estate concern. All three real estate concerns were up in between 6 but less than 7. Coca-Cola was up 6%. Then you had 13 stocks that were up more than 4 but less than 6. Duke Energy, AT&T, United Health, Lynn Corporation, Netflix, Kinder Morgan, Procter Gamble, Berkshire Hathaway, Comcast, Philip Morris, PayPal. 10 stocks up, but up less than 4%. What do we have? 3M, Verizon, Southern Corporation, Railroads, Honeywell, Industrial, Google is the second largest corporation in the world, or third. I can't remember. But anyway, Apple, Google, Microsoft are your three largest. Thermo Fisher, ABT, which is Abbott Laboratories, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Facebook was the worst performer last week, only gaining 0.8%. All the others were up over 2. Johnson & Johnson up 2.3, Pfizer up 2.7, Abbott Laboratories up 3, Google up 3.1, etc. But all 54 stocks. Broad central bank buying. We'll see what happens. Summer's going to be tough. So, thank you for joining. Been a Tuesday. Hope you had a good Memorial Day. Been the Bogdanich Perspective, TalkCast PDX on the web at talkcastpdx.com. Join us again next Tuesday. See, now that we've picked up the proper plot, let's see how our novel goes. They're going to attack two large towns, Slovansk and I can't remember the other one. If they use the same pattern that they did at the Severodonetsk, it's going to be very, very ugly. Very ugly. Instead of populations of 15,000, you're looking at towns of populations of 300,000. So hopefully they don't do that. Or maybe they do that. I don't know. But anyway, we'll find out. Thank you for joining. Join us next Tuesday, the Bogdanich Perspective, TalkCast PDX, and Do Widzenia. That means goodbye.
Portland's most respected and lowest priced office furniture dealer.
Office Furniture Direct.